Blog Talk Radio.
You're listening to Critical Mass Radio. Now it's our turn.
Hello and a very good Friday evening. It's 7 p.m. in the UK, 2 p.m. in Eastern Time in the United States of America and Canada. You're listening to Andy Peacher and Kevin Bull. It's the Earth Needs Rebel Show. Visit our website on freethinkingvoice.org. If you want to call into the show or use the chat box, please go on to criticalmassradio.co.uk and put your comments in the chat box.
You're listening to Critical Mass Radio. Now it's our turn.
CMR Critical Mass Radio in association with We Are Change Manchester and Freedom Northwest. Please note the views and opinions expressed by the hosts on this show are not necessarily the views held by the station. CMR is for people who want answers, because now it's our turn.
Yes, indeed, it is our turn. On today's show, we have Kevin Bull, co-presenter, and Freedom... Sorry, I've already forgotten who I am. Start again. So anyway, yeah, on tonight's show, we have Kevin Bull, and we have Ryan Brooks. Ryan Brooks has been a soldier in Afghanistan, and he's a co-host of another station that I use on Saturdays, OrionTalkRadio.com. Kevin, good evening. I've forgotten who I was for a minute. Are you there, Kevin? Technology. Ryan, are you there, mate?
I'm here, Andy. I can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, no, I get confused when I press a button on the panels and it don't respond, and you're thinking, am I going live? Am I talking to myself? Kevin will come on at some point when he's got a question. So I think we've been thrown into the deep end now. So where should we start then? I suppose we start from kind of who are you, what got you into soldiering, and what did you see over there, and what do you do for a hobby, I suppose, and what's happening what's ailing the world, as Dr. Carley would put it.
Right. Well, excuse me. First off, Andy, I want to thank you so much for letting me on the show. All right, that's Kevin. I'm taking it.
Yes, hello, Kevin. So you're about 10 minutes too late for the hello.
I'm sorry about that, chaps. Ryan, slight technical problem there, but we're all on now, my friend.
Hey, no worries. Live radio, right, gentlemen?
It is, sure.
Is. Please continue, Ryan.
Okay, yeah. Basically, my name is Ryan Brooks. I am coming to you guys live right now from Washington State out here in the United States. I grew up, I'm 26 years old. I grew up kind of as your average American, just kind of going along to get along, didn't really pay attention to a whole lot. I can remember when September 11th happened, I was a freshman in high school. I didn't really think too much of it. I believed the hype. The terrorists did it. It was horrible, and now we need to go fight the bad guys. But it took a few years for me to really decide that I was going to join the military. I remember it was in 2005. After every year over here they play September 11th as it happened on the television. And, of course, it's the edited version. They don't show Building 7 or anything like that. But it's really just kind of a propaganda, really appealing to your emotional mind. And I watched it in 2005, and I was not doing too many good things in my life. And I just figured, you know what? I'm going to go join the military and go fight these terrorists in Iraq. I don't have anything to live for. I'm going to go serve my country and just be a man. And I stormed into the recruiter's office of the U.S. Army and said I wanted to join and go fight. And, it was funny how things worked out, because I never went to Iraq, but I did go to Afghanistan. And I tell you what, guys, Afghanistan... Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. Now and again, when there's a relevant question come through on chat box or Skype, I tend to put in... I wish we had a little button that goes ding-dong, but there isn't, so I have to interrupt. On the 9/11 thing, and I did say we won't talk about that, but I told my brother all about that, and I showed him some links, and we won't go into it big time, but my brother's question from about a week ago when we was having this very unwanted debate, really, because basically, when it comes to child stealing, he was in the same mindset. I had to explain. I had to get him to conferences. I had to sort of educate him a little. Now he understands that kiddies do get kidnapped by the government, blah, 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 for whatever reason.
Right.
Now it's coming on to the 9/11 thing, and he's saying, but you saw all the planes hitting the building. There were people on live television crying because somebody died in them planes. I mean, just on that question, how do we answer that one?
Well, there's been evidence out there, Kevin, and I've got some pretty good videos on my YouTube channel. My username is Bull Moose Brooks. You guys can see them for yourselves. There's literally people that were paid to go on TV and say exactly what the story was supposed to be, as far as, I saw this plane hit, and I saw this happen, I saw this happen. But looking back on it now, it just looks so corny and hokey. I guess what I'm getting at here, Kevin, is that
Andy.
I'm sorry, Andy, I'm sorry. What I'm getting at here is, okay, it definitely was a horrible attack, and over 3,000 Americans did die. I'm not disputing that at all. However, the big problem here is that the official story is a lie. We, around the world, have all been lied to about how this happened, who did it, who's responsible, and all these things. So, yes, people died on 9/11. I'm not questioning that at all. But at the same time, they say that it was a man in a cave who was making the most powerful military in the world stand down. He had these hijackers who hijacked airplanes with box cutters and pulled off unbelievable, nearly impossible maneuvers in these airplanes that even, Air Force veterans would not be able to do. These guys supposedly did it. And, only 4% of Americans, Andy, even know about the third skyscraper that fell on September 11th, Building 7. So it just goes to show we buy the government story. We don't even look into it for ourselves.
To be totally honest with you, Kevin reads more papers than I do, but I knew about the two skyscrapers, and obviously I knew about the other planes and then the Washington plane and all that stuff.
Right.
But, I think the majority of the world wouldn't know that the third skyscraper went down as well.
Yes, and that's what actually started to get me wondering. Like, I had my whole Afghanistan thing going where I was over there for a year, and I saw a lot of just stupidity. Unbelievable things are going on over there. And so when I came home, there's a saying over here that when the student is ready to learn, that's when the teacher can begin to teach. So many of us in America don't even want to look into it for ourselves. We think we know everything. We're so arrogant. But I tell you, Andy, after experiencing Afghanistan and seeing it for what it was, when I heard about Building 7, I was just like, oh my goodness, what is this? Like, wow, I want to know more. And then from then on out, man, it was just, going down the rabbit hole, researching, finding out information. And there was just so many discrepancies with the official story. But all it takes is for you, the listener, or really anybody out there, you just have to pretty much start at the first level. Just say, hey, you know what? I'm going to pretend I don't know anything about this at all, and I'm going to try to look at it from a non-biased perspective. I'm going to listen to all sides and create my own opinion. I know that sounds easy, Andy, but there's a lot of people in this country who won't even do that.
What you're referring to there is what we're on now, and what we're on every Saturday for me anyway, is freedom of speech radio, and it's independent media. This is what us hosts do. We listen to the yeses, the no's, and make our own decision.
That's the thing, Ryan. And with having you on the show, we're fortunate enough to get some of this firsthand, because over here we see the same replays of 9/11 and the World Trade Center being hit by the aircraft over and over again. And of course, the other interesting bit of film that's been played so many times is the aircraft hitting the Pentagon, which on the slowed down versions does look awfully like a missile, which is another argument we're seeing. What do you get on that side of things regarding the Pentagon?
Well, I tell you, as far as the Pentagon, there was over 86 cameras on the Pentagon itself. The videotaping, that's one of the most, if not the most secure building in this country. and probably one of the most secure buildings in the world. They didn't release any footage at all of this supposed plane that hit the Pentagon until 2005, I believe. It took them a few years to release it, and even then, there was clips cut out where you can only see the nose of whatever this thing was, and then you see the explosion. Believe it or not, guys, there's actually witnesses that were in the Pentagon that say, hey, there was a bomb. That was not a plane. I mean, the hole that this supposed plane created was only 15 feet wide. A 15-foot wide hole made by a plane that has a wingspan of over 125 feet. It just doesn't add up.
Yes, and the other thing I've seen on this type of footage and the arguments behind it, I wouldn't be anywhere near as your understanding on this at all, Ryan, but I understand from the aircraft side of it, for an aircraft to fly at that speed at low level, there were ground effects that would prevent this happening on the aircraft, the cushioning effect of the ground, to go in the way it did, whereas a missile could go in at that kind of size at 15 feet, shall we say, or 15 meters or whatever
right.
it is, whereas an aircraft would have too much ground friction with with the mass of the body to going in the same way.
Absolutely, and that's a great point, because this projectile, whatever it was that hit the Pentagon, it penetrated numerous walls into the Pentagon, and these are cement walls, like bunkers. An airplane would not have done that, and it doesn't matter what kind of airplane it is, but not to mention the fact that there was really very little wreckage at all, no bodies, no luggage, no nothing. But the American people just are so eager to just go along with what the, I call them the mainstream, the mainstream media we have over here, and they're taught just not to question. So, folks, the truth is out there. You just have to be able to, kind of put down your defenses and just look at it as, well, I don't know anything. I'm going to look into it for myself. And that's when you start finding all kinds of discrepancies. I know 9/11 wasn't the point, guys, but, I mean, we could do a whole broadcast about it. There's so much stuff out there.
I'm sure Timothy will educate us very shortly about the 911 false flag and all that. But what I was noticing, in America, well, in Canada as well, and of course Australia, everybody, don't matter whether it's chemtrails, whether it's stealing children, legal issues, paying taxes, whether it's false flagging, the mainstream media run a mile when there's any truth in any story. I mean, it's amazing. And what I've also found, we do have to stick together, all these countries, because, there's no way in this godly earth can we survive on our own. I mean, I was put in the chat box about, I love Americans, but there's no place like home. I meant that from a personal point of view, I don't want to travel the world just to meet people. I can go to America on the station, I can go to Australia, and people are lovely, and there is no place like home, but at the same time, home can be as far as you want it to be. So what I'm trying to say is, Jimmy's always talked about linking up with CMR and the hosts, and I think that's an awesome idea. And by sharing our networks, by sharing our knowledge, we just come one big radio media network. And
right.
What we're doing in the UK, me and Kevin Bull here, we're having freethinkingvoice.org into like newspaper, blogging, TV, radio, and we're linking it up with every good station such as Orion and Critical Mass.
And I agree with you wholeheartedly, my friend, because we as the people who can see the lies for what they are, who are actively trying to get the truth out there to our fellow citizens, whether it be in the UK, America, Australia, Canada, wherever, I mean, we are the resistance, and you're absolutely right. We are a lot stronger together than we are separate. And I was kind of making a comment in the chat room with the Ron Paul movement over here in the United States. They say that trying to get the Ron Paul supporters to do anything, it's like herding a bunch of cats. And I don't know if you guys can visualize that, but cats don't listen to anybody. They'll run around and do whatever they want. And that's kind of the problem we face over here, is that we're so disorganized. And you're right, my man. We need to get together, because together we are so much more powerful. And I think Orion Talk Radio is a great example of that, because we've got hosts from around the world. We're really picking up steam.
I was just going to say that. Sorry to put in. I was going to say OrionTalkRadio.com. I mean, I like to plug everybody because it's part of my makeup. if somebody's good and they're doing me some good service, like Critical Mass Radio, Paul the manager, brilliant guy, so is Jimmy. Sorry, I've lost my train of thought now, but basically, Jimmy has probably, and it's no disrespect to this station, it's only started a few months, they're very new, up and coming, very brilliant, they're doing conferences to promote the organisation, but Jimmy, I don't know what, it's probably his media background that's got Orion going very quickly also, and it's got 1.5 million listeners every single month.
Right. And, Andy, I don't know if you know this. I was talking with one of our tech guys. In the past week alone, we had over 235,000 new listeners to Orion Talk Radio. We are really starting to catch some momentum because, like you said, we've got hosts. I think it's the linking. The hosts are talking to other hosts in different parts of the world. They're going on their show. We're going on your show. We're exchanging emails, comments on chat boxes when they're live because we've met. And it's spiraling out of control, which is a good out-of-control system. Right. And I tell you, the powers that be, the robber barons, the globalists, the people who hate free humanity, they are shaking in their boots right now that the Orion Talk Radio Network is getting so big because we have just started. And once again, Andy, it's just really a pleasure to be on your broadcast, man, because I just have respect for anybody around the world who is not scared to get up on the radio or the television or do whatever they got to do to get the truth out. So I commend you, my friend. You're doing a great job.
Yeah, Kevin wants input briefly.
Yeah, Ryan, I must say, it is interesting to watch. I mean, I'm 57, so I've seen all the different eras of radio develop, and there's a lot of similarities between early FM, once it became the independent side, and what everyone's doing on alternative radio. And the same thing's happening, Ryan, in that the advertisers obviously have got a different audience, and they're straight on board for this because they've got a different captive audience for the advertising. And lo and behold, we've now got a situation where state officials are coming onto the shows, doctors, professors, and everyone we need to give expert opinion and everything in an environment that is not walled in any way beyond legality, I suppose. So we're able to go much further than the mainstream. And we've actually now observing, Ryan, that mainstream are actually following with the same guests as us from our own shows now. So the stories are going back into mainstream, and that's got to be healthy for mainstream, Ryan. If we've got this situation occurring, we're opening the door. I think all of us working together in this.
Definitely, and I tell you what, Kevin, it's to the point where so many Americans are starting to wake up and realize that what they see on the television, this corporate media, they're lying. They can see it because it's starting to get painfully obvious that they are just hyping up the propaganda louder and louder, and then that's where we come in as the alternative media. And you're right, we have guests, we have congressmen, senators, professors, doctors, teachers, activists, motivational speakers, artists. We have it all, and all it takes is for people to just kind of realize, like, wow, we have a problem. I've been lied to, and I don't want to listen to these lies. That's where shows like, The Earth Needs Rebels comes in. That's where shows like The Sound of Freedom come in. And I tell you what, I've had a lot of jobs in my life. I've been in the military and all these other things, but I've never been so happy and so proud, really, of what I'm doing until I got on board with Orion and just being a part of this movement, because it's definitely a positive thing.
Well, I'm very lucky in my respect, being a host on two global media giants, really. And I've had it also typed into one of the messages that most of the presenters or hosts on this program, and maybe in Orion, they all belong to Lightwaves Radio. I've never heard of them, so I'm going to try and be their friend next.
Right, and hey, I mean, we are stronger together than we are separate. Benjamin Franklin, one of the founding fathers of the USA, was famous for saying, we shall all hang together or we shall hang separately. And, I'm like you, Andy. I'm all about just plugging other hosts, other networks. If you're trying to get the truth out and you don't have some type of hidden agenda where you're fear-mongering or trying to make money off of people, well, hey, if you're not one of those guys, then I'm your friend and I'll do whatever I can. It's not about ego, you know.
Actually, I'm going to have to play a very patriotic record now. I wasn't going to, but basically, Kevin, he's saying what we've been talking about for days and months on Facebook. You'll get people who want money out of people. People scare people. People don't actually want to do anything, but they're moaning about not being able to. And you are absolutely right. We only need people that you've just mentioned. Good evening. It's Friday evening. It's 7:30 in the UK and 2:30 Eastern Standard Time. Hello, Ryan. Carry on with your soldier story. You're going into the Army recruitment office or whatever you call it,
right.
and let's go. You know, so you didn't actually know where you were going, but you obviously ended up in Afghanistan. So you carry on.
Right. I joined the Army in 2007 to get away from home out in Washington State, see the world, and go fight the terrorists in Iraq. And it turned out that I didn't even leave the state. The Army kept me in Washington, so that didn't work very well. But I was very lucky. I got to spend a majority of my time here in America. But in 2009, I did deploy with the 5th Stryker Brigade, 2nd Infantry Division, out of Fort Lewis, Washington, to Afghanistan for Operation Enduring Freedom. Now, this was right around the time that Barack Obama was elected as president, and they sent us to the southeastern portion of Afghanistan where American forces had never been before. Our job was to go secure the Pakistani border south of Kandahar. So basically, Andy, we get there, and my mother told me that it was going to be like a movie, and she was right. I mean, I felt like I was on Star Trek or Star Wars. Everything was so foreign and different. The people were so different. The sun looked bigger. I mean, it's just very strange over there. And I tell you, on my very first mission that I went on, my vehicle was blown up in an improvised explosive device, an IED. The back end of it was blown up. My lieutenant, he lost both of his legs. My executive officer had every bone below his hips shattered. We had a reporter from Spain with us. He lost a leg. His cameraman had his ribs broken, 3 ribs. And I just remember thinking to myself, as soon as the IED hit, I was very lucky. I was in the center of the vehicle, so I didn't get hurt. I was on the machine gun. And as soon as that IED hit, the first thing that went through my mind, Andy, was, what was this? I did not sign up for this. And as soon as I thought that to myself, then we were in a valley, so we started getting gunfire from the hills. And, my truck's blowing up. There's blood everywhere. A chunk of my lieutenant's leg is on top of the vehicle. I'm in shock. I'm doing what I'm trained to do. I'm returning fire. I'm engaging the enemy. And, that right there, I remember writing it down the day after it happened so I would never forget. And I wrote about how, I was still your typical brainwashed soldier. I said, we're going to get revenge. How dare they do that? They have no idea who they're messing with. And from there, Andy, that's when we started to see things that really shook me to the core, that really made me question what is going on. For example, I was a cavalry scout, which is basically our job is to kind of go ahead of the main force and do reconnaissance. We're supposed to be able to spy from long distance and not let the enemy know that we're there type stuff, And we were observing the Pakistan border. We'd do this for hours on end. We'd watch the Pakistan border in the dark of night. We'd have the most high-tech, advanced technology in the world with thermal vision, night vision, all these things. And Andy, we would have nights where we would watch the Taliban come over the border. There'd be like 30 of them coming over the border on their donkeys. And we knew without a shadow of a doubt they were Taliban. We had it from confirmed sources, everything. And we would call back to base like, hey, we have eyes on the enemy. Do we have permission to engage? And they'd say, no, come back to base. So now we have 30 Taliban in our area, and then guess what happens a couple days later? Oh, some more American soldiers die because now those 30 Taliban are in our area putting bombs on the road. So when I saw stuff like that, I started to question, like, why are we letting the Taliban in here? What are we doing? And it gets worse, Andy. We would do things called traffic control points, where we'd be driving around and all of a sudden we would be told to set up a checkpoint on the freeway and start pulling over every vehicle. And we would be using biometric systems where we would get their fingerprints and their iris scans, and we'd be putting them into this huge database. that's connected to the FBI, the CIA, and things like that. Well, we actually caught a Taliban member, a quote-unquote terrorist, who had just got done trying to create a bomb, and he blew his hand off, and half of his face was gone. And we knew for a fact he was Taliban. We got his fingerprints, we got his iris scan. It came back as a hit, like, yes, he is Taliban, confirmed. We called the base up and say, hey, we caught one, and they said, let him go. Andy, seeing things like that really started to make me wonder, what in tarnation is going on over here? Why are we catching bad guys and then having to let them go? Meanwhile, soldiers are dying left and right. I mean, it was just, it was very sad. And the thing is, it goes against everything you're told in the military. So many soldiers are just going to go with the lie, because it's easier to go with the lie rather than to start questioning things. You know what I mean?
Sure. I think Kevin wants a comment on that one.
Interesting what you're saying there, Ryan. From your experience as a soldier, what you seem to be passing across to us is that the rules of engagement weren't quite making sense as a tactical battle.
Oh, that's an understatement, my friend. And that's a great thing you brought up, because the rules of engagement would change on a daily basis over there. You have soldiers who are scared to pull the trigger because they don't know if they're going to get in trouble or not. Kevin, right now in Afghanistan, every single round that is fired by anybody in the United States military immediately goes under investigation, and everybody has to file paperwork and do sworn statements. You have soldiers that you are training, like infantrymen and cavalrymen, who are trained to react and kill the enemy. That is what their job is. And now they're overseas in a war zone, think they're too scared to pull the trigger because they might get in trouble. I mean, my heart goes out to those guys, Kevin. It's very hard to put them in that situation.
I can understand that, Ryan. And was it more of a sense of policing the situation and keeping a balance where there was no advanced cleaning up operation of what you were dealing with? Or did you get a sense that this was almost intentionally protracting what was going off for the forces to remain there for a longer period of time? What did you make of it?
Right, that's a great question. You know, in 2009, that's when President Obama announced the troop push. He announced that 33,000 soldiers would be going to Afghanistan to help the forces that we already had there. And basically our main mission was to pretty much scout out our region and find all of our friendly Afghan Border Patrol bases and things like that, and then to pretty much defend the highway and make sure that the highway stayed at operational conditions. That way our follow-on forces could come down there and set up shop. Well, I'm finding this all out now, Kevin, is that our colonel, the guy who was in charge of our base, he had to strike a deal with the head Border Patrol agent, this general from the Afghans. And well, this general from the Afghans, he was a general of the Border Patrol. His brother was one of the highest-ranking Taliban members. So he was like a mafia member. He ran the Taliban and he ran the Border Patrol. And we had to strike a deal with him saying that, hey, we're going to let you grow as much poppy as you want, and we'll leave you alone. Just make sure that we don't get attacked while we're out there driving around. But not digressing too much from what you're saying, it was definitely a policing operation, nation building. I mean, I just have so many other stories that could really illustrate how senseless and stupid it is over there. If I have time, could I tell one more story that's going to blow your guys' socks off?
Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
I was going to say, sorry, Kev, Ryan, you've got for 1 more hour and 5 minutes, so you can talk about as much as you want to talk about. What we'll do is we'll have a break every now and again just to get a bit of water and get your breath and all that. But yeah, you carry on with your stories, and I was just trying to think, is there some kind of, soldiers going to Afghanistan, Iraq, they want to do the best, not only for the family income, for their country, for their being a man or whatever, right. But do you ever get the feeling that all this was set up by the politicians to make fun of us?
Well, I can definitely see that now, looking back on it, Andy. That's a painful truth that I have come to acknowledge. And yes, I mean, Osama bin Laden, it was reported that he died in 2001 by Pakistan, Egypt, numerous countries in their own media said that he's dead. Meanwhile, even if you believe the American side of it, well, we killed him in 2011, we still have over 84,000 men and women from the United States in Afghanistan. And the story I'm going to tell, I mean, this shows what they're doing over there right now.
Can I just say on Bin Laden's side of it, I believe from what I've read, I mean, he definitely didn't die in 2001. I believe he did die in 2011, but from what I don't think you told me, and if you did, this will spoil what you're saying, but I believe in the end he died in America because he'd done a deal with the Americans and they helped him with his kidney problems before he died. But anyway, that's what I heard.
Right. And, the Bin Laden family and the Bush family have definitely been in bed for decades. So, everybody's entitled to their own opinion. My only thing that I'm saying here, Andy, is that with Obama, so many people in America are like, I hate Obama, blah, but they believe his story about Osama. And all I'm saying is his story, we have no proof at all. Just looking at it from a logical perspective, we don't have any pictures of the body. We have no proof at all. And then a couple months later, 75% of the Marines, the Navy SEALs, who were supposedly involved in this raid, they magically died in a helicopter accident in Afghanistan. So it's very suspicious. But, yeah, we don't know when he died. But what I'm saying is he's dead. I'm pretty sure. At least we all think he is. And we still have almost 100,000 troops in Afghanistan. And here's something that's just – it really sticks out to me. We had a village that was really close to the Pakistan border. It was the largest village in between Kandahar, which is a huge city in Afghanistan, and Pakistan. And this village was a known Al-Qaeda Taliban hangout, okay? So one of our big jobs for my platoon was to go to that village every day and to try to make friends. And the Afghans, they have their own way that they want to go by. They call it the Afghan way. And they don't use irrigation very well. They don't grow food very well. They're very confused. I wouldn't say confused, but they just do things their own way. And one of our jobs, because there was another village maybe 15 minutes away, the people were dying of starvation. The people were in absolute horrible condition. And our job was to try to help the villages be friends, because one village was growing food, the other village wasn't. So we would literally be risking our lives every day to go back and forth between the villages trying to make friends with these people who neither of them liked us, and they didn't like each other. And what I'm getting at here, Andy and Kevin, is that we had a civilian contractor, he was an American, who was paid over $100,000, way more than a soldier gets paid, and his job was to teach Afghans how to grow food. So we had a mission for a few months where we would go to this village and he would show them how to grow food. And at the end of the growing season, their crop was spectacular. They quadrupled the size of the crop that they grew. They grew potatoes and all different types of vegetables in a spectacular array compared to the past. And the Afghans are all happy, and the civilian contractor is saying, so you guys you like this? And they're like, oh, yeah, this is nice. And then he says, so you're going to do this for now on? Because now you can give food to your neighbors. And they said, well, this is nice, but we're never, ever going to do this again, because this is not the Afghan way. We don't care. We're not going to do this again. And we had to go back and forth every day, guys, to this village. And we got hit in IEDs numerous times, going back and forth. Millions of dollars of equipment damaged, legs being lost, soldiers being injured, all to drive around an American civilian to teach them how to grow food. And then after we did it, they didn't even want our help. They're never going to do it again. It's just a complete waste.
Kev?
Yes. I'm listening to you with that, Ryan. I'm building a picture up from first-hand information, which is far better than what we're getting through mainstream media. And really, it's prompting further questions of the vision you're presenting from being on the front line in Afghanistan. And it's starting to match with some other arguments that I've heard made. Now, whether these are valid or not, you would know far better from being in the theatre. But some of the views put forward to reasons for dealing with terrorism or being in that arena at particular times is to do with positioning troops in certain landmass areas for other operations that are going on beyond that, as well as, to a certain extent, it's so top-down run and ignoring the frontline information going up the chain that it seems to be led either in some kind of political or corporate way rather than a military fashion of tactical warfare.
Right. And that is a great point. I mean, the soldiers over there, they're not told very much as far as from the top. They're not really told what's going on. I was talking to a former soldier that I had. He's in Afghanistan right now. And I'm asking him, hey, are they telling you guys anything about Iran? Because Iran is threatening to attack Americans in Afghanistan. And they said, no, we haven't heard anything about that. But what I'm getting at, is to go back to the question about fighting for corporations or corporate policy. We had a president back in the 50s named Dwight D. Eisenhower who warned against the military-industrial complex. And I had never heard about that before. But when I was at my base, we would have, it was literally 50% soldiers and 50% civilians. I started to realize that there was a problem when I saw that in the war on terror, guys, in America, the cooks, the military cooks that we have, they cook in America when we're doing our training exercises. They cook. But when we go to Afghanistan, the cooks don't cook because we have civilians that cook for us. When I met a guy who was walking around the motor pool where all of our vehicles were, he was an American. He was wearing sandals. He didn't have a weapon or anything. He looked like a hippie, He was stoned on marijuana, totally out of it. And I walk up to him just to talk to him, like, hey, man, how you doing? And he's like, hey, bro, and just started talking to me. And he said that he was getting paid over $125,000 to be at our base to work on vehicles that we didn't even have on the base at all. So all he did was sit in his room with air conditioning and internet and then smoke marijuana with the Afghan Border Patrol, and he was getting paid over $125,000 a year to do that. And that's when I realized, wow, how come the Army cooks don't cook? How come we have civilians who aren't doing anything, who are getting paid twice as much or more as the soldiers? I mean, we have all these stringent standards about, well, you have to wear your eye protection or you'll get in trouble. Meanwhile, groups like Blackwater are driving around outside the base, driving around cars, shooting people for fun. They don't even have to wear helmets, and that stuff really started to strike a nerve with me, like just questioning. But the thing was, when I try to talk to my fellow soldiers, because of the conditioning and the brainwashing, they were all just like, oh, you're thinking too much. Just stop it, man. I mean, we're here because of 9/11, remember? I mean, just stop thinking like that, man.
And
I know, sorry, Kev. Kev wants to ask a question, but all it is in my mind, I'm thinking from the ordinary person's point of view, 125,000, I think that's the right figure. But anyway, this person employed, got all this money, he doesn't do much, he has a very nice, well-paid holiday. Now, children are being stolen by the UK government,
right.
The social services, CPS. The people that take them get huge amounts of money for doing nothing. There seems to be a pattern here around the world with governments falsely claiming money for whatever reason, and guess who pays it? The taxpayer, the person who works all their life.
Right. And that's a great... yeah, go ahead, Kev.
Yeah, if I can, also on the same subject, Andy, you bang on where I'm going, you're going to realise this, Ryan. What we're seeing, because we work in so many different fields of, we're dealing with the legal side with children internationally and in individual states, and there is a pattern of behaviour that you're actually describing this, as Andy's saying, that matches this side, and we call it the gravy train, where you get states with the establishment on top of the states able to really filter state money into the hands of independent or large families, organisations and that across the planet. And they're able to ensure that what should be state funding and the normal economical use of funds actually becomes a gravy train where price is not a problem, as long as the money's going up from the taxpayer into the hands of private individuals. Now, what you're describing is like the gravy train we see in law around child proceedings, where people have placed huge amounts of money on this gravy train to take children for forced adoption and to place children at every single level. The description you gave there of this individual being paid $125,000 for what he's doing must lead on to people at the top of the chain getting much larger sums of money, surely, Ryan?
Absolutely. And, through my research and just through my personal experience in Afghanistan, the war on terror, Iraq, Afghanistan, and whoever's next, this is really the first time in American history that the war has been a contractor war. Hundreds of millions of dollars have been awarded to private contracting groups, such as Halliburton, by our own government with our taxpayer money to let these contractor groups do what the military should be doing. And, there's so much stuff going on behind the scenes, so many things that even soldiers in Afghanistan don't know what's going on. So I definitely would not say that, that's just crazy for you to say that, Kevin. I mean, I'm with you. And in America, I mean, they'll take your kid away in certain states. If you have a baby and you don't want your baby getting vaccinated, they'll take your child right then and there. So I guess what I'm getting at here is if you look at, like, history, when empires start to collapse, it's from the social fabric. The social fabric falls apart. So when you have people who will do that, who will steal children, who will kill women and children and innocent men for no reason, when you have them doing that, that's one of the first signs that you're going downhill. And I'm not blaming anybody individually, because this is just a massive propaganda campaign on our soldiers, on our citizens in America, to go along with this, to look down on the Afghans. I see a question here in the chat from Bob that's saying, do I think that the actions are a type of genocide of our own troops? And I would say to an extent, yes. Now, I'm not saying that they're a bunch of evil baby killers. They're not. However, when we get in war, the winning team, so to say, or I guess the opposing sides, they have to use things like religion and racism to take away the human element of the enemy. So then when you're ordered to kill someone and take their life, you will not look at it as, well, I'm killing another human. You're going to look at it as, well, I'm killing a dirty brown person. I'm killing a stupid Muslim. And that's how, I was in that mentality when I was there. I thank God that I never killed anybody like that. I never did that. But there are people, rogue soldiers and platoons and things like that who are all about killing them for fun because they're dirty, disgusting Muslim people is what they're encouraged to believe.
And you're describing propaganda, obviously, Ryan, that's used all the time. I mean, we've got this right the way through history. We can look back at it. It's used in every war, whether that be a civil war or whether that be an international war. And
right.
What you're actually describing, the use of propaganda, is actually also used in trial proceedings and in the theatre of war and the reasons behind taking those actions. But if you then look underneath what you've already opened up to us, in that everything seems to not quite make sense, that you get the opportunity to deal with a tactical situation in the theatre and you're told no go, then you're losing lives of your comrades there because they've let Taliban through. So
right.
This is perpetuating something here. And is it possible that part of the perpetuation is the perpetuation of the gravy train itself?
I could say yes. I would say that just through this overall conditioning to obey, to listen to whoever's ahead of you and don't question, it's not too far, out there to say that, not only do we have private contractors out there driving around killing people for fun and things such as that, but it wouldn't surprise me at all to see that we're snatching up children or do whatever. Now, as far as my experience, I'm not saying that I've never seen or heard of any United States military doing that. And I'm sure that there are good people in there who would question it to that extent as far as taking children. But as far as killing people, I mean, guys, the brigade that I was in, it was called in the Army Times, which is like the Army newspaper, they called us the Brigade from Hell because some of our infantry men who were to the north of us, they would literally kill Afghans for fun. They would have grenade-throwing competitions and throw them into the village and kill some people, and then they'd put an AK-47 next to them and say, well, he tried to shoot me. And then they'd do things like cut their fingers off and send them home to their friends in America. They would take dead bodies and wrap them up in barbed wire on the front of the vehicle and drive around into villages to show them. And, it's really sad to see that. And I'm not blaming anybody individually. It's what's promoted, whether it be they're not saying do that in the Army. They're not saying go do that. But at the same time, this silent racism, this looking down on them as a lower form of people, that's definitely going on. And I guess once you get that out of the way, then the sky's the limit. If you've gotten your military to think that the people you're fighting are a lesser form of human and they're a dirty, disgusting group, then your soldiers and your military are going to do whatever you tell them to do.
That's true, yeah. I had a question a minute ago and I lost it. Oh, it is, yeah. When did you realise that you were fighting for corporation, for corporate policy?
Right, and I kind of touched on that a little earlier. I mean, basically when I started, that's fine. When I started meeting contractors on the base who were civilians who weren't doing anything at all, they were getting paid 2 times or 3 times more than the average American soldier. That really started to get me to question. And also, when we would do drug busts, we did a drug bust where we found, I don't remember the amount off the top of my head, but it was a huge amount of hashish. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kilos in the bricks in an underground facility. Our Afghan partners actually accidentally were driving, and they drove over it, and the ground collapsed from beneath their truck. So they fell into this huge stockpile of drugs. And what did the United States military do? We were told to form a perimeter. We had to stand there, or we stayed there and guarded it until the CIA showed up in black Chevrolet Suburbans in the middle of Afghanistan. They just show up out of nowhere, take all the drugs away, and leave. And that was unbelievable.
Yeah. I've got another question. What we're going to do, we're going to have another little, very small music break. But the next question, it might actually be a long answer because I know Kevin will have a lot of input to this question. Right. How far gone, basically, are you mentally when you kill for fun? I mean, even when you chop people's fingers off for fun, but certainly when you kill for fun, you know, it's okay shooting each other because bang, bang, you're dead because you never got out of the way. That's one thing. It's a war. But when you do it for fun and when you do it, chop the fingers off, you know, are you mental? Are you psychopathic? Are you empathic?
Right.
There's no empathy there, is there?
No, and that's a great point and a great question, and you're right on the money because in America we have, I believe the number right now is around 12 million sociopaths. 1 in 10 members of Wall Street are by definition psychopaths. Our elected leaders are megalomaniacs. This sociopathic behavior is being encouraged on our television, through our video games, and the infantry, you know, their job is to seek and destroy the enemy. That's what they do. So you've got all these poor kids who are joining the army right now who have grown up with shows like Jersey Shore, which is complete garbage reality television. They grow up with shows like Mob Wives, which is more just complete garbage. And I've seen statistics, guys, where it says that the average American sees more simulated death in their lifetime than any soldier in any war ever. So they're literally programming your brain. Your brain doesn't know the difference between simulated death and real death. And then you throw in the racism and the religious element to it. You know, we're in a holy war. The Muslims are trying to kill everybody. So you go over there. You're already conditioned to, your brain doesn't know the difference between real death and fake death. And you're looking down on them. And if you have some toxic leadership in there, then hey, shoot away, kill that baby. You know, kill that kid. That's just one less terrorist to worry about. And I think it's a great point. When you do kill for fun, you are absolutely gone. And to me, that's not an accident, guys. They are breeding this in our military and in our police at home because as things continue to get worse on the world economic stage, they want these same people that when our dollar dies to start shooting American citizens. And those people will do that.
Yeah, interesting what you're saying there, Ryan. I'll reflect back to the training because the training changes over the years, and it's different today than it was 8-10 years ago.
Oh, absolutely.
In persuading people to kill, it has a totally different approach psychologically. But it used to be, the old method was to really teach hatred as part of, and to have a looking down, exactly as you're saying, from that position that you're justified to do it on the old system of teaching on training military personnel. You probably recognise that. But as it's evolved, it has changed a little bit, I understand, to really looking at it from more of a moralistic viewpoint and looking at protecting your comrades and all this sort of thing in the justification for taking the life of another person. So it's changed with the psychological method of training, Ryan. I don't know whether you recognise that bit before I go on to the next.
Yes, and I agree with you, Kevin, because, I had a section sergeant. He was one of my bosses, and he was involved in the invasion of Fallujah in Iraq. And he told me stories about how children would run up to him, and they would pull the pin on a grenade, which gives you about 10 to 15 seconds before it detonates. They'd pull the pin and run up to you and try to give it to you while you're in a firefight. And he actually took that child's life. He shot that child and killed him. But it was kind of like you said, a live or die scenario, and he has to live with that. And I don't know what I would have done in that situation. I feel horrible that not only him but other soldiers have had to be faced with that. I mean, women suicide bombers and things like that. But at the same time, there is a difference between defending yourself and defending your friends and your brothers in arms, and then killing the Afghans or the Iraqis for no reason. And I'm not saying that the military's over there doing a lot of killing for no reason, but there are rogue groups, groups here and there who are out there doing that, and it's not the USA's fault, it's not the Army's fault, it's just it's a reflection of our society. The only people that are joining the military right now, they're a lot less high caliber person than 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, because they're realizing that this is all a bunch of bull.
Yeah, it's interesting what you say when small groups in the theatre, because in actual fact, could that be partially explained? You can get individuals that cross their own personal barriers, and then they cease to look empathically at what they're doing, the guilt and responsibility. It becomes a low empathy, even decreasing empathy towards the enemy in the theatre.
It's literally sociopathic behavior.
Sociopathic, psychopathic, that's it.
Right.
And that comes from them then projecting on the enemy, whether they be a child or whoever it is, where we have the atrocities that can then happen, where collectives, small groups of a military force can start to function the same way and start to be very predatory on almost anyone on the opposite number. They're no longer thinking in a totally trained tactical way. Did you see any of that while you were over there?
Well, I consider myself very lucky, guys, because, that the incident I talked about at the beginning of the show about my being blown up in an IED and seeing body parts and all of that, I consider myself very lucky that that's about the worst of what I saw. Now, as far as the platoon and the troop that I was in, they were a very well-disciplined group of guys. They truly believed in what they were doing. They were trying their best to do good. We had some kind of crazies in the unit, so to say, but they were not allowed to go kill people for no reason. That was not encouraged. But I will say quickly another little story here about an incident that I was involved in, where we have interpreters, Afghan civilians that work with us, so then they can interpret, the villagers or whoever we talk to. And they live pretty much with the soldiers. They live in this big compound, and they have their rooms at the end of the hall, so to say. And these people really started to make the soldiers they were really annoying. Like we'd be on a mission, and they'd start pulling your pant leg while you're up there scanning, and then they're pulling your pant leg, saying, "Hey, I want you to stop and pull over because I have to pray right now." And you're like, "No, we can't do that. We're on a mission." And they'd say things like, "Oh, yeah, I mean, you guys are the infidels. Like, you didn't know? Like, when you die, you're going to be my slave because you're not a Muslim." Now, are they bad? No. But I'm saying they would say these things to us, and we'd get kind of sick and tired of it. With the perception of the Afghans, we just started to detest being there, period. And the interpreters decided to hook up this big, huge Afghan flag and fly it over our rooms. And then they would do things because they thought it was funny to say, "Hey, soldier, you see that flag? It's beautiful, huh?" So all these soldiers started quietly kind of complaining about it, like, "Oh, these stupid Afghans take the stupid flag." Well, I was talking about it with my boss and a couple of my friends, and we were like, "Hey, let's take it down. Screw it. Let's do it." And my soldier actually, in the cover of darkness, took the flag down. Then we were trying to figure out what to do with it, because as soon as the Afghans realized their flag was took down, they started going crazy. They're running around with flashlights, freaking out. So we were getting scared, like, "Oh no, what did we do?" And I said, "All right, just hold the flag here, and I'm going to come back in an hour, and we'll figure out somewhere to bury it or just make sure no one ever sees it again." Well, what happened, guys, was the soldiers got scared, and they took the flag and ripped it up and put it into a porta-john, like a porta-potty bathroom. And when one of the Afghans went to use the bathroom, he used the bathroom and he looked down and he saw that that he just defecated on his own flag, and it completely drove them insane. They all threatened to quit right then and there. I got in trouble for it. My soldier got in trouble. My boss got in trouble. But I guess what I'm getting at here is, looking back on it, I feel like that was a very silly thing to do. And at the time, we were the only people who actually had the fortitude to commit action, because everybody was mad about it. Everybody was complaining, but no one did anything. So we did something, but looking back on it, I feel really stupid, because all that did was just fuel that fire. You know what I mean? It really offended the Afghans very much, whereas we were offended that they would even fly this flag over our rooms, our little tiny piece of America that we had, and we still had to see the stupid, dirty flag. That was the mentality then. But now, looking back on it, I definitely don't see it the same way.
That's right, and this is interesting, because you're obviously a very wary person just listening to you, Ryan. I know you were thinking outside the box as well. You couldn't just accept the conditioning of us and them, and that is it. You're an aware person, so that's going off as well. What is interesting, there would be a number of people like yourself that possibly were put in situations where you've got to take lives and do that sort of thing, and you'll have some that push on from that through damage, that project even more on the enemy and do increasing harm beyond perhaps what was necessary for the tactical war. But then there must be people like yourself in the theatre that start to ask questions when they're seeing all this. And coming to a realisation point while you're in a theatre and you're still in the situation of having to take lives tactically and everything you're doing must be horrendous, because you're aware that the campaign and everything you're involved in isn't ethical, in the sense of, even on a military level, it's not quite making sense. And everything you do in taking lives, you're then starting to face guilt and responsibility in the theatre rather than when you come back. Is that sort of part of what was going on, Ryan?
For me, I mean, a little bit. I really didn't start to really wake up, so to say, until I came home. But I would say that's a possibility. I mean, there's soldiers who have done 5, 6, 7 deployments to Iraq, Afghanistan, and the thing is, though, Andy, is that the lie is just so. I mean, the propaganda that they push on the soldiers is so in your face, and I'd say 80% of them are all about gung ho, army strong, kill the terrorists, 9/11, remember 9/11. That the people who question it, they almost end up getting demonized. You shouldn't go and start asking people questions. I have a friend who I served with who he started to ask questions, and he started to get very depressed about what was happening. What you're saying, Andy, happened. He started to wake up, and he was like, this is completely pointless. This is just horrendous. What are we doing? And he started to get depressed. Nobody in his platoon could talk to him, because everybody else in his platoon, which is a group of about 20 guys, all the 19 others were all just, army strong, rah. So when he tried to talk to him, they would say, oh, you're a pansy, you're a stupid, limp-wristed weakling, whatever. So then when he told his sergeant that he was feeling depressed, they acted like, he was going to kill himself immediately, and they made this huge, degrading, embarrassing scene about how this soldier just said he's depressed, take his weapon away. They hauled him off to another base where he had to have a mental evaluation for a few weeks, and it was one of the most degrading, embarrassing experiences he had ever experienced in his life. So I would say that, if you're waking up over there, it is a very painful thing, because you're going against the grain. You're a minority. You're getting away from the herd, so to say, and you really don't have too many people to talk to about it.
I would imagine the information sources you've got over there, I have no idea, but like you're saying, the, shall we say, in-forces propaganda to keep everyone motivated in the same direction, if that's limited compared with what we're able to obtain, if you're getting less information over there, that's going to be even more programming for the tactical forces.
Yes, and that's a great point. I have friends who are they're over there right now, and they've been following my actions since I got out of the military, and they found out that I'm a radio host, and they want to listen to the show. They can't. Their internet connection will not allow them to go to my webpage. The internet connection will not allow them to go to the Information Nation, another host on Orion Talk Radio. Some of their computers can't even go to OrionTalkRadio.com because it's DoD, Department of Defense protected, and this website has suspicious activity on it, yada, yada, yada.
Suspicious, it's the truth.
And we're veterans. I'm a veteran. I'm not out here hate-mongering and saying the troops are a bunch of baby killers. I'm just putting truth out there, And their connection over there, their internet will not allow them to see those things. And it's another great point that, on September 11th, we had a big formation, and the colonel gets up there and makes this, tear-jerking speech about, remember this day, men, 9 years ago, the, flight this and that hit, and this terrorist attacked us, and that's why we're here, and your country is so proud of you guys. And they're really, it's kind of like the Spanish-American War back in the late 1800s, where the main phrase was, remember the Maine, remember the Maine. And now it's remember 9/11, remember 9/11. Don't question it at all. Remember 9/11.
Okay, then at this stage, do you want to have your tea and biscuits and a bit of water? And you're listening to Andy Peacher and Kevin Ball. This is the Earth Needs Rebels. I nearly said the wrong show. I've got to stop thinking about tomorrow. Well, actually, while I'm talking about tomorrow, and I'm sure you guys, because we all join hands, in this big need, really, to get the information out, the truth. We've got an exceptional show. Now, we did try and have the same show on CMR, but it wouldn't work because of a rally tomorrow. So, tomorrow on the RyanTalkRadio.com, 2 p.m. UK, 9 a.m. Eastern, we have number 1, the Vote No campaign, the Irish referendum against children's rights. Vote No, and that's with Ryan Brooks. Second guest is live roving reporter Maggie Tuttle from Trafalgar Square, London, and she will just give her bit about that day in Trafalgar Square, what that means to her. And finally, the third person we're having, all the way from Birmingham, England, our local MP, friend that talks about the children, that's John Hemmings. So on the Ryan Talk Radio tomorrow, it's going to be amazing. So anyway, you listen to criticalmassradio.co.uk. It's Andy Peacher, the Earth Needs Rebel Show, and Kevin Ball. Yeah, good evening. You're listening to the Earth Needs Rebel Show with myself, Andy Peacher, and Kevin Ball. Please visit our website, which is www.freethinkingvoice.org, and the Earth Needs Rebels page is on that website, as well as many other topics that we talk about on all shows. And all the show links are under the TV, radio, and news tab. Ryan, where do we go next?
So many different directions we could go, Andy. I was just kind of thinking over the break about some of the things that Congressman Ron Paul has warned about how wartime practices, they start during the war, but they always come home back to our shores in America. And if I could just touch on a couple of things that we were doing in Afghanistan that now we're doing in America, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Well, one of the first things is the spy blimp that they have. And forgive me, I don't know the exact name of it off the top of my head, but it is a multi-billion-dollar blimp that flies a couple hundred feet in the air, and it can see for miles around. Incredible optical zoom, just another incredible surveillance piece of equipment. And we use those in Afghanistan, and now we're using them here in America. We're using them in the state of New Jersey to surveil cities, to spy on citizens walking around the cities under the guise of keeping them safe because crime is so bad, et cetera, et cetera. But one thing also, Andy, that I thought was pretty silly was in our region, we had one of the most heavily IED'd routes in the entire area of operations. From Kandahar to Pakistan, we had the main road that had the most IEDs on it of any other road, okay? And we have this blimp, and it's supposed to be spying and keeping eyes on that road so we can identify the bad guys whenever they put bombs on there. However, our commander on the base, he was so obsessed with discipline, soldier discipline, that instead of using that blimp to look at the road, they used the blimp to spy on soldiers on the base to make sure that they were wearing their eye protection at nighttime.
Wow.
I mean, talk about nonsensical, talk about idiotic and stupid. And if they were using this multi-million-dollar piece of equipment to spy on soldiers, not even to secure that road, and to make it worse, that blimp flew away over to Pakistan, and we had to go try to recover it. And then guess what happened on our way to try to recover it? We hit another IED. More soldiers were hurt, more vehicles destroyed. We never found the blimp. It was just it was like a bad dream, you know?
Yeah, Ryan, it's interesting in the theatre where you're going there. I suppose it's a question you might never have had asked. I don't know. What is it like when you realise you're coming to the end of a tour of duty and you've got to adjust back into Civvy Street and the realisation of all that?
Oh my goodness, that's
it must
great,
be dramatic
great
for
question. Yes, I tell you what, guys, I'm really happy that I did some writing when I was in Afghanistan, because you get put in a mentality where if you see an American flag flying, it literally brings you to tears. You learn to appreciate what freedoms we have left so much. And when I went home, well, first, before I got home, I wrote down that I would never, ever, ever do this again, ever. I could do anything in America and be happy. I could be a mailman. I could work at McDonald's. I could do anything, and I would be better and happier than if I was to do this fake war. Now, when you come home, it's literally like the conditioning and the I guess just going along to get along mentality that we are trained to have in America. It's not with you. So when you get home, you're like a wild man compared to the average citizen. I would only sleep maybe 3 hours a day because I was so excited to be in America. I would wake up at 3 in the morning just to go buy a couple newspapers and drink coffee, just to be able to do that. And I was just on fire. Everywhere I went, I was the life of the party, and I was just so excited to be home. And I was, reading books and addicted to learning. I'd be going out to national parks by myself for weekends at a time, just tromping around the woods, and my civilian friends were like, man, you are crazy. Like, why would you go in the woods by yourself and all this stuff? But where I'm getting at here, guys, is a couple months later, you start to get used to it again. You start to just kind of accept it as, well, this is how it is. And within a few months, you're not thinking about how stupid Afghanistan was anymore. You're thinking about, how do I get back there? How do I go back? How do I get that adrenaline pumping again, whether you realize it or not? Because I tell you, getting blown up, getting shot at, firefights, that gets your adrenaline pumping. And when soldiers come home, they look for ways to replicate that adrenaline, whether they know it or not. And so many soldiers die in high-speed motorcycle wrecks, or they drink themselves to death, or they start getting involved in drugs, because something within them is still trying to find that incredible adrenaline that flows when you're getting shot at or under attack,
That's interesting, Ryan, because what you're describing in a medical point of view, there is an answer to that after a tour of duty. When you're in a tour of duty, we have a HPA axis that supplies cortisol that damps adrenaline. And when you're under stress, the adrenaline's flying because of the action you're in and everything else, and you're struggling with cortisol. When you come back from a stress situation like you're describing, initially you're on a high because of the change. Your stress level's right down compared with what you're going through. And you go through a buzzy period that then, for some people, becomes thrill-seeking to keep it going. And there's a change of behaviour because your cortisol's topping up, and that starts to damp out all of your feelings, and then you feel like you're deprived of any feelings for a period of time. Is that part of your experience?
Yes, absolutely. I would go through... I had a lot of, I wouldn't say a lot, because, a lot of soldiers have post-traumatic stress problems. They have guilt where, for example, you have your best friend, and your best friend drives the Humvee, and then you sit next to him, and then the one day where you're like, hey, man, I'll drive today, and you can sit in my seat, and then you go out and you get blown up in a bomb, and your friend who is sitting where you should have been sitting gets killed. Survivor's guilt. I've seen men that have been absolutely decimated by that, and it just breaks my heart to even try to talk about that. That's just horrible. But you're right. There's so many conflicting thoughts going on, and then not to mention if you come home and you start and you're questioning, and then you get into the rabbit hole and you start really looking into truth, it'll make you go I won't say insane, because they are demonizing veterans in America right now, but it'll definitely get you thinking. The thing that really got me, guys, was when I started to think about Afghanistan, looking back on it when I'd been home for a few months, and then I realized that the Department of Homeland Security says that military veterans, particularly white military veterans, are the biggest threat to our country, bigger than Al-Qaeda, bigger than the Taliban. And, I was ready to accept that as a truth. I didn't just reject it and say, no, that's impossible, like a lot of soldiers do. I looked into it. I verified it. That is truth. And forgive me if I'm kind of rambling here, but, I mean, that's just kind of there's a lot of conflicting ideas. And the military makes it easier for you to stay in. I mean, you come back and you have all this money that you saved up, and then you spend it all, and you live beyond your means, like so many of us do in America. So next thing you know, it's like, well, I got to go deploy again so I can pay for this car I just got. I got to deploy again so I can pay for this house. I got to deploy again because my wife took everything I have, and now I need to start over. I need to deploy again to get revenge for my friends who were killed. I need to deploy again so, these young kids who have no idea what they're getting themselves into will have a good leader. And if anything, I would rather die than let them die for a lie. I mean, I've thought, I won't say all of those things because my ex-wife did not take everything I had, but a lot of those things, just trying to pay the bills and being a good leader to other guys, those were the thoughts that I started to put in my head to justify going back.
And you clearly indicating an empathy towards your comrades and also future comrades going over. You kind of sound like you're moving into an area to protect from the learned experience, if you can, others.
Right. And that you're absolutely right. I mean, when I started to realize we have a major problem, and I was still in the military, every soldier, airman and Marine in the United States military swears an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States to all enemies, foreign and domestic. So I would walk around and I'd ask soldiers, I'd say, hey, soldier, what's the First Amendment? And they'd laugh at me and say, that's funny, Sergeant Brooks, I don't know that. I'd say, hey, who is the first president of the United States? Didn't know that. Say the Pledge of Allegiance. Soldiers who have pledged their lives and who are in Afghanistan right now didn't even know the Pledge of Allegiance. And I'm just kind of getting at, we take an oath to defend and protect the Constitution, but most people, including soldiers in this country, don't even know what the First Amendment of the Constitution is, and that's a serious problem to me.
Yeah, how supported are you when you return from a tour of duty, whether that be permanent or the end of, or just a period in between? Do you get proper support counselling and everything there? Is that there for you in reality? Are people able to access it after they've been over?
Yes, there is a lot of, I just cannot imagine what a Vietnam veteran would have to go through. Because in my opinion, they had it a lot worse than we had it today. And then they'd come home and citizens or Americans would be throwing vegetables at them and just spitting on them and calling them baby killers. We don't have that in this country now, and that's encouraging. However, it's almost kind of a problem that our society now, we support the troops so much that we don't support the war, but we support the troops. So if we go to Iran, then we don't support the war, but we support the troops being there. And just the idea in our society that if you want to be a man, if you want to, serve your country, then you must join the military. And that's kind of where the thought dies. It's not even questioning the wars. I mean, we haven't even declared war the proper legal way since World War II. And how many Americans even know that? It's appalling. But I will say, though, they do have help here. They do have veterans. I mean, I'm going to be waiting for these guys when they come home just to shake their hand and tell them, welcome back and you're okay. And, people have a lot of stress, and they do have the means available to them. I will say that. It's encouraging to see that, but we got to be careful not to let that get to blind patriotism, blindly following the troops no matter what. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do. I don't understand where you're coming from. But I heard earlier how your realization point increased when you got back over a period of time. How did your thinking change as you kept reflecting back to the theatre and then looking at Civvy Street and what you were doing to the point that you started your own radio show concerning freedom over there in the US right. to get the word out? How did that all develop, Ryan?
Oh, well, that's a great question, but I'll tell you, basically, I came home and I was just so excited to be back in America, and it was just enjoying being able to go to different parts of the country and see the sights and the sounds and partying it up all the time and that type of thing. But after a few months, I was still fairly go along to get along, and I was just on the internet, believe it or not, and it was when Charlie Sheen, if you guys know who Charlie Sheen is, an actor over here, he had like a mental breakdown, they say, last winter, and he started getting all crazy, and so I was just on YouTube looking up mindless fluff. I wasn't searching for truth or anything like that. I just wanted to see Charlie Sheen's rants because I thought they were funny. But in turn, I found, guys, I was a adamant Obama supporter. I thought Obama was great. So when I see this video that Charlie Sheen, an actor in America, made saying my message to President Obama, and I watched it, and it was all about September 11th, and that's when I saw Building 7 for the first time, and then that's when I started to realize, like, oh my gosh, what is this? So I started researching, and it was so hard to take all this information in because it was absolutely mind-blowing with the unconstitutional wars, false flag terror, propaganda, child trafficking, genetically modified food, chemtrails, geoengineering. The stuff was so hard for me to take in, I just started writing it all down. I wrote almost 2 full books of research. I started reading things like Bill Cooper, Behold a Pale Horse, The Creature from Jekyll Island about the Federal Reserve, the writings of our founding fathers. I found Ron Paul, and it really started to wake me up. But at the same time, I was still in the military. So when I'd go to work, I'd ask my fellow soldiers, I'd ask them about Building 7 on 9/11, and they would laugh at me and say, "Oh, Brooks is crazy, the Russians did it. This dude's just, cuckoo. He's going crazy." A lot of people demonized me and thought that I was like off my rocker. And a lot of people out here in America don't want to embrace truth because you have to separate yourself from the herd. You have to separate yourself from the mainstream. What's cool, what's hip. And people don't want to do that, because they don't like getting made fun of or whatnot. But where I'm going with this, guys, is I became so motivated that I said, you know what? I'm not going back, and I'm going to do everything I possibly can to make right what I have done wrong. The fact that I participated in the war on terror, the fact that I fell for the lies for so long. And I've always been told that I'm a great speaker and that I should have, get a radio show sometime or run for office. That was something people used to say to me. But I figured I was out of the Army for a few months. I got out in December 2011. I was out for a few months, and I volunteered for Ron Paul. I did hundreds and hundreds of hours of volunteering for Ron Paul. When Ron Paul's campaign was over, I decided I'm going to get a real job and go back to the workforce, and I was working at a factory. And it just drove me mad. It made me feel like, wow, this is the kind of job that I joined the military to get away from. Like, I had no time for activism, so I just said, you know what, I quit my job, and I'm going to follow my dream. I'm going to start my own radio show. And that was this summer. And since then, it's just gone leaps and bounds. Orion Talk Radio found me. I've got some really good mentors there who have been in radio for 40 years who are helping me get my lines down and just really my skills. And it's just been so incredible to be a part of this. So it's been a rough ride, but ultimately I wouldn't be doing anything else, man. I mean, just getting the truth out it's such a good thing to be doing,
Absolutely, Ryan. And I think what you're doing is obviously brilliant. And I've kind of done the same in the same getting the truth out in the same time scale. This last few months, waking up, finding my feet, and I think if I can tell people on the radio a little bit quicker I can than doing the activism. But unlike what you're saying, I've got time to do radio, TV, newspapers, internet, organise conferences, go and stick glue in letterboxes. No, well, I don't do that, but like next Friday I've got a protest on a local thing, just a family affair really, against the local social work department. So I have got time for everything, but I guess it depends on your show. Yours is 5 days a week, isn't it?
Yes, sir. I'm 5 days a week, Monday through Friday on Orion Talk Radio.
And what's the name of your show again, Ryan?
The name of my show is The Sound of Freedom.
And the time of day? That's on
the time of day.
UK time, Europe time.
I believe, my time is from 7 to 9 Eastern time, so I suppose that's from midnight to 2 in the morning your time?
Correct, yeah.
So it's a little late, but you guys can check out the archives. If you go to Orion Talk Radio, go to archives, you can listen to the show. We're really starting to take off. I try to point out that there is no difference between the Republicans and the Democrats. They're both gangs that are the same at the top. I cover a little bit of news, but I really just try to get into having informative guests on and just really try to motivate people, because something I just thought of hearing you guys talk is, we all have skills. Not everybody needs to be a radio host. Everybody has something that they're good at, and if we can just get full spectrum dominance, everybody contributing with what they can do, then we can make a difference. I believe in the goodness of people, and it's hard sometimes, but I believe that if enough of us stay motivated and get involved where we can make a difference, whether that's writing, making music, radio hosts, handing out flyers, whatever you can do, we can make a difference. But it takes standing up and saying, hey, I'm not going to take this anymore. I'm going to be the change that I want to see in the world.
Absolutely, Ryan. And I was talking to a colleague of mine in Kevin's earlier on, a good buddy he is, and he's not sort of certain which way he wants to go with things. But what you're saying is definitely bang on there. That'll probably make him make his mind up. You must do something at least, because not doing anything is criminal, I think. Even if it's only sending an email now and again about a worthy cause. You don't have to be a big protester, you don't have to be a radio station host, but as long as you know the truth and you're doing a little bit, that will protect the people of the future. And obviously we need to get rid of the establishment first, and then we can get rid of our governments, get the right people in them, hopefully the people in government, the People's Bank. We're starting to get somewhere then. Well, that's my point of view. Anyway, I need to mention again for Maggie Tuttle the Truth and Hope rally tomorrow in London, Trafalgar Square. Again, it's live on Orion Talk Radio in the afternoon. Brian Clare is saying to people he's definitely going, and if you want to Skype him, it's Brian Clare 101. Brian Clare's a survivor from the system. He's been abused in the system, and he's now a big campaigner. After that, we have on the 5th of November a very, very big march, rally, whatever you want to call it, expected to be in the hundreds, maybe 3,000 is expected. V for Vendetta, the 5th of November, Guy Fawkes. That might give you a little clue to why people are there in mass numbers. House of Commons, London. And finally, Critical Mass Radio has a conference on the 24th of November. We'll mention this very regular at the Britannia Hotel, Disney, Manchester, and it's really sort of a bonding session, I guess. We're having guest speakers, get to know each other, exchange ideas, and how to move the station forward. I wish Jimmy would pay for me to do that in America, but I guess that's just asking too much.
I must say, Ryan, I have to thank you. We build this as a soldier's story, and it certainly has been a soldier's story, hasn't it? You've been able to enlighten us in the UK from the US side of everything as well. And I know from listening to you, everything you said to me is very factual. The story sort of starts to make sense at an increasing level once we can get information firsthand like this, because everything we're getting through mainstream media is so loaded, Ryan.
Oh, definitely, and that's the big thing to me, Kevin, is that it's the media is responsible for so many of our men and women who are in Afghanistan and think they're doing something honorable or great. And I'm not bashing them at all, because it's so many well-intentioned, well-meaning people, but they're unknowingly participating in this beast, this evil system that is preying on not only the people of Afghanistan, but the people of the UK, America. I mean, we've lost so many freedoms since September 11th. It's absolutely mind-blowing. And through information, through teaming up with you guys and just, groups like Orion Talk Radio and Critical Mass Radio, I mean, when we team up and we get the truth out there and we're not scared to do it, that's all we can do. I mean, this is an information battle, and getting the truth out, I think it's on our side. We have goodness on our side. We have the truth on our side, and no matter who tries to demonize me or say that I'm off my rocker or whatever, I know in my heart what I'm doing is good. And just talking with you guys and the great listeners in the chat, it makes it all worth it, because, I mean, we are we are the good guys. We're going to be able to make a difference in this world. We just can't let ourselves get run down, and it's hard not to do. We just can't give up. That's the big thing. Just keep doing everything you possibly can, promoting love, promoting peace, and try to have a little bit of fun as you do it.
Yeah, it's obviously, I agree with you. It's thanks to Paul at CMR Radio to provide this service for everyone to plug into, and of course Jimmy Ryan Talk Radio. It really is growing, and it does give you something that's totally unwalled. Everyone can come on and say whatever they like, basically,
right.
And it's up to the individual listener to decide and make their own mind up, which is the way it should be, rather than walled and programmed information.
Right. That we are being trained what to think, not how to think. I mean, you look at the Founding Fathers, they were trained in the trivium, grammar, rhetoric, logic, or I believe it's grammar, logic, rhetoric. I'm not very well versed in it, as you can see, but our citizens, and I believe it's probably the case in the UK, we're not trained to think for ourselves, to use logic. We're trained to take what the media gives us and just run with it. And that's if you even care. I mean, so many people in this country just don't care. And unfortunately, in our lifetime, we're going to see a massive change where fiat currencies die, and people who have ignored reality and who have lived in this fantasy world, they're going to be confronted with truth. And my big thing is if you accept the truth now, no matter how painful it may be, you're going to be so much better off than the people who are just putting their head in the sand. I mean, they will be confronted too. And it's up to them if they want to take what we're saying seriously and do something about it.
Sorry.
Go on, Andy, please.
I was going to say absolutely. It's personal choice. Like my brother, I mean, we've got about 8 minutes left, but like my brother, he was saying, he doesn't understand it. And I mean, about the 9/11. Mm-hmm. Now, I can understand his point of view, and you did answer that question, but then the tears were real, he was saying to me. The panic was real, the blah-de-blah. And I said they could have probably, it probably, I told him that the buildings did blow up. Was it with the planes? Question mark. Was the people reporting in the media real? As in,
right.
They probably lost their relatives, but did they lose them to a plane crash, or was it just they were on the ground or something? It's very hard for people to understand that, like it was, and I refer to the same incident. If I go to my local supermarket tomorrow morning, we have a conversation about beans or peas, and then I say, did you know that your local social services department, CPS, they're taking children without good legal reason, and we can't do nothing about it? They would look at you and say, I'm going, bonkers.
Right.
Same with 9/11.
Sorry, Andy. Interesting point on the 9/11. There was a comparative thing that was played against it. That we had an aircraft, I believe it lost RT totally, coming in from Europe to Heathrow a few weeks ago, and this resulted in the dispatch of a fighter aircraft to basically shadow or intercept the aircraft because of the danger around the Olympics at the time. I don't know whether you picked up on the story, Ryan. And of course, everyone's asking the same question as happened prior to 9/11, when aircraft were dispatched effectively to chase the known non-RT aircraft that were involved, as to whether or not it went as far as shooting that aircraft down, which would be a tactical standard thing to do if it became that serious, because there's no other reason to launch a fighter. You can't do anything else with it.
Right. And that's a very interesting point. I mean, we have over 135 flights a year in America on average that go off course, where they have to scramble fighter jets. The average response time is within 1 hour, where they get up there, they fly up there to make sure everything's okay, reestablish communications, and, it's never a big deal. But on September 11th, 2001, the first and only time in American history did it take more than 2 hours to get any jets in the skies at all. Even if the Flight 93 that crashed in Pennsylvania, supposedly, even if that was shot down, our American government says that it crashed. It was not shot down. There's evidence out there from Google Maps that shows that crater that was in the ground. That crater that was in the ground had been in the ground since the 90s. It didn't. I mean, there's just what I'm saying here, guys, is you have to take for real. Yes, buildings died, and it was a horrible attack. But the main story that we were given is an incredible lie, and that's a great way to start. If you can see 9/11 for the lie that it is, you can see the 7/7 train bombings for the lie that that was, then you start to see all kinds of deception that's going on around you.
If we looked at the psychology of propaganda in the final minutes that's been used throughout the years, we can go back to Nazi Germany, we can go to any wartime, and whenever we look back, we find out what it was all about. And that's where people get the idea that propaganda is running around 9/11, I think, in the sense that if you want to make sure that your population and your forces are going to fight an enemy, you need to make sure they hate them.
Exactly.
And is that not the theory, the psychological theory, that any think tank would come up with to create something like 9/11 in people who argue this exists? People can grasp this, that there would be a concept of this type to generate that kind of feeling, to perpetuate a war.
Oh, you're right on the money, Kevin. I mean, it's a group called PNAC, and I can't remember what the P stands for, but it's the Post-New American Century or something along those lines. It's called PNAC. Look it up if you guys haven't heard about it, to everybody listening, that it had almost all of these Republicans that were in the George Bush administration, Dick Cheney, Donald Rumsfeld, Paul Wolfowitz, Jeb Bush, all of these Republicans who are saying in PNAC that we need to have a new Pearl Harbor to get our agenda that we need to have accomplished. We won't be able to accomplish this agenda without anything short of a new Pearl Harbor. This document by PNAC came out in the year 2000. And where I'm going with this, Kevin, is all of the freedoms that they've taken from us since 9/11, the gate rape at the airports where these pot-bellied freak thugs for the Travel Security Administration grope our genitals, put their hands in our pants, touch our women, touch our children, and we accept that because of terrorism. Terrorism. Go back and watch Obama's speech, President Obama. Watch his speech he gave when we supposedly killed Osama. Look how many times he says 9/11, 9/11, 9/11, 9/11. Everything they do is justified with 9/11. So you're right on the money, Kevin. They are using it as a way to justify everything that's happening to us today. When you see that it's a lie, when you admit you were lied to and you fell for it, which is okay, because I did. I fell for it, but I had the fortitude to stand up and say, you know what? I was wrong. I did fall for this, but I'm not going to fall for it anymore, and I'm going to tell as many people as I possibly can to look into it for themselves.
Exactly, Brian. Can I just say very, very thank you for coming along, Brian Brooks from the USA, the Ryan Talk Radio show host. And thank you, Kevin. As you're always here, I'll thank you personally later.
Okay, Andy.
You've been listening to the Earth News Rebel Show on criticalmassradio.co.uk. Please visit the website, freethinkingvoice.org. And I wish Paul, the station manager, and all the great hosts at Critical Mass Radio a very good evening and a very lovely weekend. I'll be back Sunday evening, my new show at 6 o'clock with Kevin, and we'll see you there.
You're listening to Critical Mass Radio. Now it's our turn.